People of Earth, attention. People of Earth, attention. This is a voice speaking to you from thousands of miles beyond your planet.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to bring to the front our trumpeter, Lee Morgan, to do a beautiful ballad for you. And we sincerely hope you
Yeah, Lee Morgan with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers from 1964, a tour that they did in Europe and the UK. Thankfully, some TV stations were hip enough to shoot some video or film at the time, and we just heard Lee Morgan play Easy Living. I love ballads. I wish more people played ballads. These times that really aren't suited for ballads. The tempo of our times is rather rapid, so to speak. John Hicks on piano, Victor Sproles on bass, Art Blakey on drums. Also on that tour, not playing here, you might have heard him a little bit in the background, the great tenor player who played so much with Sun Ra, John Gilmore. Of course, Sun Ra's music, very outside, very avant-garde, very adventurous. John Gilmore comes from that into the Jazz Messengers and brings something else to the music. Perhaps if John Gilmore had not spent most of his time playing with Sun Ra, he'd be much better known as a tenor player. Now, someone sent a message in Polish, and I understand Polish. See if you can translate this for us. I know that we have a lot of Polish jazz listeners, which I think is fantastic. I have no idea what that says. I hope it's okay. Our friend the tenor player, Lawrence Cohn. Hey, Lawrence, how are you today? So today's show is going to be a combination of different eras, different music. I call it Jazz Legends and More because most of the artists featured on today's show are legendary. And I want to go way back to two of my favorite all-time tenor players, two men who had a profound influence on this music. I'm talking about first Coleman Hawkins and then Ben Webster. Wow. Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster, I mean, that's the foundation of the tenor saxophone in jazz, along with Lester Young. They all appeared in the 30s, the late 30s. Of course, Coleman Hawkins had the first hit instrumental jazz recording with Body and Soul in 1939. Sonny Rollins remembers as a 10-year-old kid walking up and down the streets of Harlem and hearing Coleman Hawkins solo out of the jukebox of a number of bars. Both of those tracks we just watched were recorded in Europe. Coleman Hawkins in Paris and Ben Webster in Copenhagen, in Denmark, a very famous jazz club which is still existing, thankfully, Club Montmartre. My pronunciation might not be the best, but I think that one thing is for sure, Europeans have a much greater respect for jazz than Americans. And many American musicians moved to Europe, and Ben Webster was one of them. And he did several things by doing that. One is he probably prolonged his life because he had a much better lifestyle in Europe. And he seeded the European jazz scene with his music. And what we saw in that clip were, in addition to Charlie Shavers, great trumpeter, American trumpeter, all Danish musicians and French musicians, and most notably Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen on bass, who he was just a teenager on that clip. He turned out to be one of the great bass players in jazz, certainly. And the thing about Ben Webster and Coleman Hawkins and a lot of those early tenor players like Lester Young, immediately recognizable sound. 2 or 3 notes, you know it's them. And Ben Webster in particular, who could be very forceful, had a nickname, the Brute, but at the same time played some of the most sensitive tenor saxophone playing I've ever heard. I'm a huge Ben Webster fan. I wish more people knew about Ben Webster and played ballads like Ben Webster. Now, we're going to jump here to another gig at the infamous Club Montmartre in Copenhagen. This clip and the last one were for a documentary that someone did about the club that you can find if you look for it on YouTube. And we're going to look at one of the most important people in the formation of bebop, certainly. His name is Bud Powell. Wow, Errol Garner and Bud Powell. Bud Powell was the first pianist to play the piano like it was like a horn, was like a tenor or a trumpet. He was one of the founders of the Bebop school with Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and the great Kenny Clark on drums, which when it was initially recorded, upset a lot of people. Not long after it became the jazz standard. Sadly, Bud had a very difficult life. He had some psychological issues. He was beaten up in the Army. He was never the same after that. The same thing happened to Lester Young. Tremendous racism in the United States Armed Forces in those days. And Bud's later years, his playing wasn't the best. That performance from 62, he sounds pretty good there, but he, unfortunately, life took its toll on him. Nevertheless, he inspired many pianists, and his influence is still felt today. Totally different concept, Errol Garner. Errol Garner from Pittsburgh played by ear. The man never took a piano lesson in his life. How is that possible? I don't know. The piano is oh, those internet gremlins are back. My apologies. I don't know why that happens. Where was I? Errol Garner played with a great sense of swing and also a lot of joy in his music. You could feel that. You could just look at how much he himself was enjoying playing. It was really a wonderful experience to hear him and see him. One of the great piano players. And when I was a young man in the 50s and 60s, you'd see him occasionally on television. I guess those who were programming television in those days thought that he was more acceptable to a larger audience. But what a beautiful spirit, what great music. And speaking of jazz being played outside the United States, we're going to jump over to one of my favorite jazz festivals, the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival. And we're going to hear Woody Shaw. The first track we're going to hear is Woody Shaw and Jackie McLean. And then, who was it? Wallace Roney on trumpet with Herbie Hancock and Art Blakey on drums. So let's go over to Japan for the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival. Here we go. Beautiful trumpet playing there.
Blakey, Sergeant Moffett,
Yeah.
Herbie Hancock, Wallace Roney.
Yeah. Mount Fuji, as one of our Japanese viewers just tells us, Mount Fuji is now a rock festival. No jazz since 2004. Jazz used to be immensely popular in Japan, and over the years it's diminished. It's still respected. There used to be a lot more touring American musicians in Japan at festivals and clubs. Certainly the Blue Note club in Tokyo, I think they have another branch in another city, brings over American musicians. But what kind of made touring difficult in the 90s, the Japanese economy totally crashed. And unfortunately, that had an influence and impact on American musicians going to Japan. But there are still special jazz clubs in Roppongi, an area of Tokyo, tiny little bars where a collection of every jazz recording ever made is on the wall. And I sure look forward to visiting Japan. I am a sushi eater. One of my goals in life is to eat sushi in Japan. Well, thank you. Stacy Michaels tells us that the other Blue Note Club is in Osaka. So you can still hear great jazz in Osaka as well. Okay. Salvador said best words. Okay. Yeah. Well, something special about jazz listeners in Japan, for sure. 2 jazz legends, actually 3, actually 4, coming up here in the final 2 tracks. First one, Gerry Mulligan, the great baritone sax player. Young people today really don't know about Gerry Mulligan. He certainly was a major force in jazz in the 40s and the 50s and 60s. He was around hanging with Miles Davis in the late 40s, producing the birth of the Cool Sessions, that music. He also led an absolutely great big band and a pianoless quartet, and certainly one of the great baritone sax players in the history of jazz. Great musician. He left us 2030, I forget, I don't know the exact date. His music lives on. And then after that, our final track of the day is from a jazz festival someplace, I don't know where, on one of the tours produced by Philip Morris. They sponsored a number of jazz concerts in the 90s. This one showcases one of the greatest musicians in jazz and one of the greatest people, James Moody, on saxophone, who was worked with Dizzy Gillespie, brought him to the forefront. And after that, just incredible player, James Moody. And just a warm man with a great sense of humor. John Faddis is on trumpet here. John arrived in the early 70s from Oakland, California, a Dizzy Gillespie disciple who played a whole lot of trumpet, turns a lot of heads around completely. And as you'll hear and see here, John Lewis is a serious musician. And on organ, the infamous Jimmy Smith, infamous for me because of my experience with him. You might want to go through the Jazz Video Guide channel, and I detailed my encounter with Jimmy Smith, which was one of my strangest episodes in my career as a journalist, video documentarian, and so forth. But great player, Jimmy Smith. So I want to thank everyone for coming by once again. I'll be back again next Sunday with some really great music. Please love each other, listen to as much jazz as possible, and please tell your friends about this. I'd love to have more people join us on this channel. So here we go with first Gerry Mulligan and then the great James Moody. Bye.